Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and the Ewoks are back! In this episode, I'm your host Nathan P. Butler. We ended our coverage of the 14-issue Star Comics / Marvel Comics Ewok series back in From the Star Wars Library number 127. That's because there were only 14 issues released in the United States. However, Marvel UK continued publishing Star Wars comics, and just like what happened every once in a while in the Marvel UK series for the main Star Wars comics, we did get one extra Ewok story, or I guess Ewok book with stories in it, that was released only in the UK. But it's a little bit odd. It is a Star Wars Annual, Ewoks, but it is prose. It is not an actual comic book. It's sort of an illustrated graphic novel, very much like the Dark Forces stuff, where you got prose fiction, but then images to go along with it, like a kid's storybook in some respects. Now, there were two Ewok Annuals, or Ewok-focused annuals in the UK. The first was the 1985 Star Wars Annual. That one included Ewoks number 1, The Rainbow Bridge, but then included from the main Marvel series, Star Wars Annual number 3, The Apprentice. So that was just reprinting stuff already seen in the United States. Then in 1988, you had a new annual, the Ewoks Annual, which makes sense to call it that given the fact that the regular Marvel series was done by that point. And that one reprinted two of the Ewok comics from the US, The Underwater Kingdom, which is Ewoks number 9, and Rights of Power, which is Ewoks number 2. But then it also included 3 original Ewok stories in prose with little images to go with them. Now, I don't own this one personally. This is basically what the cover to that looks like. But it's got 3 little teeny tiny stories inside it. Chief Chirpa Kidnapped, Return of the Great One, and The Ice Princess. Again, odd little tales, and they're ones that in theory could be slotted in with the early Star Comics Marvel stuff. In Chief Chirpa Kidnapped, we start with the Ewoks basically celebrating Halloween. Halloween on the forest moon of Endor? Yes, Halloween. HALLOWE''E-N, because that apostrophe makes it Star Wars. Anyway, they're celebrating dressed up like ghosts. And while they're doing all their celebrating and such, they wind up running into a Hanadak creature. And have to use basically these leaves by dumping them onto the Hanadak that soothe it and make it chill out so it won't eat the Ewoks. While this is going on, Chief Chirpa is busy getting stuff ready from the storage rooms and whatnot for the festival and all, and these Dulocs bumble in, very Three Stooges-esque, and wind up accidentally getting him as a captive. They try to steal basically a box with a sack in it full of stuff, only the stuff isn't the stuff they were looking for, it's Chirpa having fallen into the bag and gotten trapped inside it. They find out that he's in it, they pull him out thinking that they're going to get a reward, they tie him to a tree, they bicker amongst themselves. It really doesn't work out well for the Dulocs. Nisa, Wicket, and Tebow wind up finding Chief Chirpa, they cut him free, they kick some Duloc butt, and the Dulocs run away. What's interesting here also is that the story refers to the shaman, who should be Umwok, and the chief of the Dulocs, who should be Gornish, but the images don't really match them as we see them in the comic or in the cartoon series. Makes you wonder if maybe these unnamed chief and shaman characters might be from a different group of Dulocs, though that seems somewhat unlikely given how much they're reusing the characters from the cartoon show. Return of the Great One, a little bit weird. Basically, the Dulocs have destroyed a dam, so there's all this water rushing through that's going to wash away the Ewok village. They need to find a way to stop it. And as it washes away some of the soil, this huge Cradak creature emerges from underground. They say that the Ewoks have been in this part of the forest moon of Endor for hundreds of years, and the Cradaks were assumed to have been gone and extinct for thousands of years, but turns out they're not. This one comes out, starts harassing the Ewoks. Princess Nisa runs into Logray's hut. She whips up a potion because, hey, she's seen Logray do it plenty of times. It can't be that hard. Turns out she whips up a sleeping potion and accidentally dumps it on the other Ewoks. So most of them are asleep and can't help stop the Cradak. She goes back in. They whip up another potion. This one is a shrinking potion, basically. They dump it on the Cradak and it basically shrinks down to size and they can deal with it easily, putting it in a little cage. The Ewok children have again saved the day. Then we have the Ice Princess. No, not a nickname that Han Solo gave to Leia Organa when they first met or anything like that. Instead, what we have here is sort of a Snow White type of thing. Yet again, Nisa does something that gets her in peril, essentially. Nisa basically gets bitten by what's called an ice beetle. And apparently, if you get bitten by an ice beetle, you somehow get encased in ice and are lying there inside basically a giant ice cube. Very much like sort of the glass crystalline type of case that you see in Once Upon a Time that Snow White was in during the events of the Snow White film and whatnot. So she's encased in ice, and since they need all their defenses there and all their men there for the harvest and everything, they can't send any big Ewok warriors to go try to find the one thing that can save her, which is juice from a fire plant that's only found on the Mountain of Doom. Well, since they can't spare the adults, of course it's Tebow and Wicket that go out and try to find this fire plant. They encounter a dragon bird, they encounter the frost giants, and when it looks like the dragon bird is going to harm the frost giants, they save the day and get the frost giants to be willing to lead them to where the fire plant is. They get the fire plant, get back with its juices, save Nisa's life. Very much, honestly, like the Incredible Shrinking Princess. I mean, it's very much tied into that same idea that something happens accidentally to Nisa, and the two young boys, have to go find a solution to it to save her. Now again, all these are done in prose. There's not really much to tell us when they take place, other than the inclusion of Chukatrok in the second story, which of course means it has to be before Caravan of Courage and all. But honestly, there's not really a whole lot to this particular story, or this series of stories here. Couple of quick notes here about Ewoks. First, if you're interested in the Ewoks cartoon series, keep an eye out. Republic Forces Radio Network, the podcast that I am part of, is doing a summer series here in summer of 2013, covering all of the Ewoks cartoon series. For better or worse, we said we were going to cover all of the Star Wars cartoons, and that's what we're going to do, including Ewoks. We've already done droids and the holiday special stuff and the Clone Wars micro series, so why not? Second, though, there's a continuity thing that I mentioned early on when talking about droids and Ewoks, specifically narrowing it down to the time frames of both and where the Ewoks cartoons and comics and telemovies fit together. And at one point, I think it was from an article in Insider or something, they had told us that the Ewok telemovies, Caravan of Courage and Battle for Endor, the live-action ones, take place 3 years after A New Hope. So around the time of The Empire Strikes Back, or a couple months earlier than that because of the whole month issue between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. But then at 3.5 years after A New Hope, that's when we get the Star comic stuff and then the cartoon series. That didn't make any sense because Chukatrok dies in Caravan of Courage, but is still alive in the cartoon series. So certainly that wouldn't make sense. So in my Star Wars Timeline Gold, I had basically just taken those and put the telemovies afterwards because logically that's all that made sense, even though that wasn't what was officially being said at the time. Well, as I was reading through these different Ewok comics for this show, and as I was going back and watching the Ewoks cartoon series for Republic Forces Radio Network, I decided to email Leland Chee and ask him, what's the deal? Is there a reason why that is the case, and what is the official order at this point? Turns out, he basically said, no, actually, there must have been a misprint or something somewhere, because what he has and what the Holocron Continuity Database has is comic series, cartoon series, telemovies. So it actually is officially in the correct order that makes logical sense. It's just that that wasn't what we were told at some point publicly, and I don't think that that revised, corrected order has been stated publicly anywhere prior to that. So what we're dealing with essentially is a reshuffling, but one that is a good thing. And I would assume that these stories take place within the confines of the original comic series, because if you look at the artwork to it, for instance, Wicket has his yellow hood instead of the orange hood from season 1 of the cartoon, or the green hood from season 2. So it seems as though they're trying to encapsulate this within that same time period of the Star comics, which makes sense because those comics are also being reprinted in this very annual. So, Ewoks Annual from 1988 from the Marvel UK line, is this an essential read? Absolutely not. Not for modern fans, not for Ewoks cartoon watchers, Ewoks comic readers. They're just little throwaway stories. But it's interesting to see Ewok stories done in a comic book, technically, in prose, in sort of a graphic novel type of form here. With that, we'll wrap up this episode and the Ewoks for the time being. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.